Welcome, friends, to a podcast with interesting people. I'm Adrian Sinclair, and today I have a special guest, Rania DiBacco from AuthenticallySpeaking.com. She is a fellow podcaster, and her podcast, Authentically Spoken, is a collection of unique conversations encompassing one's journey to self-discovery through awakening to the truth of who we really are. Welcome to the show, Rania. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to connect with you and just to be able to dive deep with you.
It's been long in the making in a way, because we kind of planned to do this for a while, a couple of months, and the whole coronavirus thing happened, and here we are in May, and finally getting it going. So very excited for you to do a podcast, and I'm looking forward to your launch date, which is, I believe, May 22nd, right?
Yes, May 22nd. It's right around the corner. We have a lot of episodes already pre-recorded, ready to launch and share with the world.
Nice. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. What is your journey? You are a fellow podcaster now, but you're also a fellow kindred spirit. We met in Missouri at Open Source Ecology, at Martin's Open Source Ecology workshop, and where we built some things together, and it was a fun experience. And we talked about a lot of different things, and how, the spirituality of things, and our journeys, and what we do in this life, and how we explore it. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about those things, and the things that you're going to be talking about your podcast. But for those who don't know you yet, tell us a little bit more about Rania, and what is some of your background, your journey? How did you came to do what you do right now, and what started your journey on this podcast that you're starting?
Oh, wow. How long do we have?
How loaded of a question and opening was that?
Well, I started at a young age in the fitness industry. Like, I just really adapted to working out and channeling my energy in that fashion. And I ended up taking a route through the competition world. So I'm an IFBB Bikini Pro now. I won my pro card probably about 5 years ago. And through that journey, right when I started, I realized I was using fitness as a coping mechanism, because I didn't know how to go internally and deal with traumas of my past, and to really deal with myself emotionally. So it's still something I love to do, and it's still something I incorporate, but the reasoning behind it has shifted, which has shifted the energy within my life. When I started to dissect the web of my mind, and like the meanings and the reasons that I placed behind everything, I realized there was a lot of fear-based decisions. Like, when I went into competing, it was all about proving that I was good enough, because I really felt at the core root that I was unworthy. And it was really this way of just proving, okay, now I'm good enough. And I had no idea this was happening until I literally started to explore the inner world. And then, when I was on stage and I got off, I started asking different questions, because the fulfillment I was looking for within those moments, or in that moment, there's it wasn't there. I was still lacking this void. Right. So this really opened a door of self-discovery for me, and really learning how to process my past and these micro and macro traumas that I didn't even know really existed, and that I was holding on to. So it's really just, that's what this whole podcast thing was about, creating a safe space for us to speak our authentic truths, and find self-discovery, and transitioning into our greater self-expression, our highest expression of ourselves. I did start Fit Body Love, which is a platform for women to help them transform their internal world and create a life that they love, while living in a body that they're proud of. And really, I'm transitioning and restructuring that to bring some more magic into the world, to connect with women.
Yeah, authentically spoken gives you a little bit broader I guess, space to talk about not only the fitness topics and body issues, but like, how that fits into, everything else, right? Because we talked about our personal journeys and how we discover who we really are. And I remember like us even talking at, in Missouri at Open Source Ecology, we were like, this whole journey that we have and things that impact us through our lives, they shape us, but they are also like those milestones of when you go back and you, in retrospect, you look at it as like, wow, that changed me in like unexpected way, or that influenced me, that trauma, and that set me on this separate path. And so we discover ourselves throughout the whole life, right? And it's only through this kind of introspection that we kind of can gain some lessons from that, right? Otherwise, if you just kind of shuffle those experiences, traumas, or things that influence you away, and you have this identity and persona who you are, then you will never truly understand who you are, because you have to, in those moments of whether it's issues or problems or stress, that's what kind of helps us understand who we really are. So tell me more about, maybe if you want to share some of those, or something that kind of what are some of the first episodes that you guys going to be talking about? I'm curious, like what is going to be your opening podcast about?
Oh, well, we have a couple micro, like shorter episodes that we're going to go ahead and post because we have certain requirements for Spotify. But then we have some longer episodes, which really we dive much deeper. We speak about so much. Like we speak from, I can't even think, we've done so many podcasts. What was when we talked about the difference between intuition and deja vu, and learning how to really tap into that authentic power and trusting ourselves. It's really just really a lot of empowerment and self-discovery, like how our health is holding us back or empowering us to become a greater expression. There's just so many topics, I can't narrow it down.
But how did you pick the one that you guys going to open up with as the introductory, the first podcast? Just give us a little preview. Yeah.
We haven't picked that one yet. We have about 7 that we are still fine tuning. We just have to add like the intro and stuff, but we have 5 small ones that are going to just be there for anybody to listen to before we launch the initial episode. So they're all so good. I'll have to update you on that. I don't know which one we're going to choose. Sure. I think we're really in tune with like inspired actions. So right when we go to upload the first episode, I think we're going to listen to spirit and see what's really feeling and what's aligning for what the listeners like need to hear in that moment. Cause it's like a collective creation, because we're all one mind. So when we can tap into that field and see what feels right for what's happening right now, then we can post.
Yeah. I when we spoke before we started recording this podcast, and it's like I feel like I try to prepare like 50%, right? I don't want to be over prepared for a conversation with my guest, and I don't want to be under prepared. I want to know some things, but I don't want to know everything. I want to see what unveils, what comes up, what are we going to discover together. So that kind of inspired action. I love that. So you mentioned something that's kind of near and dear my heart, and I think everybody else deeply really feels that, which is like we are all one. We are all connected. How was your journey of discovery to that realization? Because it's a doozy, right? It's a big one when you get to that point. And how was your journey to get to that point to realize that?
Oh wow! So I was struggling about, I'd say like 5-6 years ago with an eating disorder. And when I was in that state of covering up my emotional world because it was only a symptom of not being able to deal with my internal self, I fell to my knees and I really started to pray and ask for help because I didn't have any other way. I was too scared to reach out to people. Right. And the next thing I know, God sent me an angel, somebody that came into my life and really helped me feel safe to start explore the reasons and the experiences that caused this in my life. And once he helped me through that, there was this incredible experience that I had when I was in my apartment with a really good friend of mine. And we were listening, I think, to Deepak Chopra or something, some spiritual meditation. And I looked up, and my glass doors on my balcony was open, and he was kind of sitting in the way of that, like halfway through. And when I connected with him in eyes, or when we connected, I looked into his eyes, and the next thing I know, I became everything. It went from experiencing him to experiencing myself as a rose, the droplet of water on the rose. And it just went through this whole mental adventure to where I literally was everything all at once. And it was like this eye-opening situation for me, and transformed my life and my heart.
Wow. So what were you on?
Nothing. I was so sober. I totally believe in like ayahuasca and all these medicines to help people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, plant medicines to open the door of self-discovery. But what I have found after going through that route, that it's not necessary once you reach a certain state, like you realize that is our natural state. Maybe not the high ecstasy, but that form of perfection and oneness is what we were created for. We are here to love and to be loved. And the only thing that's standing in our way is our judgments. And those judgments create barriers to the presence and the experience of love. So
wow, so well said. Have you done ayahuasca? Have you done any of these? As a previous guest of mine, he calls them the master plant teachers. I love that. It's have you done that? Have you experienced that? Ayahuasca.
I have not experienced ayahuasca, but it is on my to-do list. It is calling me. But I have done other plant medicines such as psilocybin, but I've always used it in a ceremonial type of way. It wasn't like, let me go have fun and escape. It was, I would set an intention. I would sacrifice something onto the altar. Like my very first time, because of my eating disorder experience, I needed to learn how to honor and love my body. So I wrote a letter of forgiveness and like asking for forgiveness of the way I treated my body. And that was my sacrifice. And then the medicine helped me really journey through that and release all the trauma that was around it, because my ego was trying to hold me into this identification of who I thought I was around that identity of having an eating disorder, which was only my small self holding me back from the true expression of who I was. And like, because it was so fear-based, I was so scared of my light and so scared of what I was here to create. So it's just, I really recommend it. And there's, I've tried DMT one time, which was an incredible experience and spoke to me and helped me relive and transmute a childhood experience that really I had been holding on to. So it's just, I think used in the right ways, it can transform the way humanity really connects and relates to each other, to where we can actually remove the walls of judgment and come together in unity.
Yeah. Man, it's like, okay, guys and gals, the show is done. We said enough. I think this it's the everythingness of everythingness. It's like I'm getting goosebumps when you say things like that, because it's like the truth. You feel it. It's in my journey. I kind of at some point logically convinced myself that's what I believe in terms of that we are all one expression. It's like, I think, I don't know if it was a Buddhist saying that it's like 10,000 things, one suchness, like from this one unity, from this one awareness, all these expressions which we are, that's what comes out. And through those expressions, you, me, everybody else, everything, the chair, everything, this grand awareness, whatever you want to call it, the universe, the energy, the God, whatever words you want to use to describe that, it expresses itself through everything that we see that exists. And so when you realize it, so I had a journey of realization to that, but through like on a logical level. And it's only when I did ketamine not too long ago over here in Utah. There's a therapy, ketamine-based therapy, and I had that feeling, and it was like very, very strong emotional feeling that this is the truth. So it's not on this logical level where I can convince myself, okay, we're all atoms, we're floating in this soup, so we are technically all connected. But on this spiritual, this truth moment of realization that this is the way it is, this veil of separateness that you spoke of the identity, the ego that basically says like, no, I'm just this body, I'm just this meat suit that is walking around, and when I die, this thing just dies, and that's it. It's like the droplets, it's like raindrops falling back into the ocean of everythingness, and then is being together in this one thing. And so, yeah, I'm totally on board with what you're saying, and I love when people have that journey, and I believe that everybody is. That's like the journey home in a way, where we go to that place where we realize that we are this oneness. And what does that mean to you when that happened? First of all, I'm like in awe, and I'm inspired that you were able to get to that place, without like a plant medicine or something to help you, because we do have these filters that are so strong, and I want to talk about when that happened to you right after you had that realization, what happened just right after that, and then I also want to talk about fear, because fear and identity and death, all of those things are so interconnected. But when you realize that everything is one, we're all part of this oneness, then that fear is like, it still may come back, because we still kind of, we still kind of live in this body, in this experience. But then when you recall that, that space in where you were, like, oh, we're all connected. This thing is not going to die. It's just going to go back into this total awareness. Then that fear is removed. So I want to first tell me, like, what happened right after that realization of that one connectedness, and then let's talk about fear.
Okay. The first time it happened, I literally was, when I wanted to stay there. It's like I wanted to be there forever. But when I came back, I was just so in my heart, because we tend to live in our mind because we think our way through life instead of really feeling our way. And that caused me to really tap into my heart in a way that I never have before. And I just remember falling back on my couch and I was like, what just happened? And it was just, everything was explained to me in 1 second. And it was just that state of oneness. It's happened to me another time when I was actually taking a shower, and I wanted to understand it deeper. And I wanted to understand, because I was dissecting my own patterns, I wanted to understand the patterns of the world. And, I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in spiritual teachings that are within the Bible. Religion is, a return to source, but I think that with our fear-based concept and our fear-based mind, that our ego and the collective experience, because some people were wounded in religion, that there's just a false persona there. So I really just look at the truth and what spiritual teachings really, sink into my heart, and I feel as truth. And one of them is ask and it is given. And I truly believe in this. And when I was in the shower, I asked God, I asked the universe, Krishna, Jesus, whoever you want to refer to, and asked to understand that oneness even deeper. And all of a sudden I rose above my body, and I could see myself in the shower. And then I went a little bit higher, and I could see my mom cooking in the kitchen. And then I went up higher. I could see everybody in my neighborhood and these patterns that were just going through until eventually I was up in space and could see the entire world and these beautiful patterns and how everything connects. And it made me realize that every decision that I make is the right decision, because it's going to lead me into this pattern of to where I'm supposed to go. Mm-hmm. So that was the second one. And then a third one, I was on a mastermind cruise where I was interviewing people, and I feel like you're just talking about fear. When we choose not to do something because we're scared, we then tend to make more fear-based decisions. But because I was asked to interview all these high-ranking, wealthy, well-known people on this cruise, and I'd never really done camera work, and I was terrified. But whenever I really committed to it, and I was like, I'm going to do this no matter what, I'm going to show up, I broke through these barriers of fear. And what I realized was I was in a state of perfection where there was no fear. I could see like strands of people's hair like glowing, and I literally thought I took ecstasy because of the state and what I felt. And I can link it to just breaking down all the barriers of fear and doing the things I'm called to do to truly express. And it was just so magical. And I don't remember the second question that you asked.
Well, no, you actually the second part of it is like fear, because one kind of interlinks with the other, right? Where we live through these identities and we think that we are this, and then immediately what happens is, oh, here I am, here you are, and then that space of, and then immediately into that, what flows is the judgment, right? Someone is going to judging me, how I look, how I speak, how I carry myself, what is my background, how educated I am, all these different things like just run through your mind, boom, 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 and then like you immediately put yourself in that space, in that confined space of like, oh, I have to work with this little within this box that I'm in, and so fear sets in automatically, right? But when you are in that oneness, then there's like no fear, at least to me. Like that was one of my realizations. But what was it like for you when with fear, with especially with the background that you mentioned, judging yourself, your body, that self-image that we all have, and protecting it, right? Like, oh, like, I don't want to be crushed. So fear comes into that. Let's talk about your experience with fear and freedom from it.
Wow. Okay. So fear is still something I experience today. And I'm trying to really transmute it. Like if I have any type of anxiety around something, because our mind creates stories around everything. And that's really, our mind is just full of them. So when I start to feel fear, I start to find the story that's creating it and transmute it. Like going on a podcast like this, if there's any like butterflies in my stomach, I'm like, I'm just so excited, because before the fear would stop me from moving forward. I would not take action because of my fear of failure and my fear of success. And those are two beliefs that a lot of people hold, but those stories within our mind really control our behaviors. So it's really choosing to move forward no matter what reality is telling me is happening, because it's only my perception. It's only my mind that's creating all these stories. And I'm like, where am I going? What's the destination I want to reach? And just continue taking actions no matter, because I could think of all these reasons why I shouldn't trust this person or I shouldn't be with this. And, like really start becoming the judge of my life instead of surrendering to what is unfolding before me in faith, knowing it's going to lead me exactly where I'm supposed to be. And just that's this whole journey of love. And when the moment I choose to do the thing, the fear dissipates. And it's like, oh, I'm free, because it's just that barrier. It's that our subconscious mind is so structured to keep us safe, because it has like our entire life, like our childhood, from when we're little to 7, 8, 9, our subconscious mind is being formed. And in certain moments, like connection with our family, our friends, we've created these micro beliefs in certain innocent interactions that affect us still to this day. Because, mommy or daddy may have been busy on the phone on a business call, and I really wanted to talk to them, and they said, just a minute. It's like, oh, I'm not important, or I'm not good enough. And that's why, these small little beliefs that continue to control us now. So it's like whenever we choose to move forward, those stories of I'm not good enough, I don't deserve success, or, I'm not ready, I'm not, whatever they are, we all have them. It's just choosing to move forward no matter what.
So those, so how did you break out of those those influencers? Did you have a method, or how did you work it before you had this realization of oneness, which I'm sure it helped with some of the fear and transmutation? By the way, I really love how you use the transmuting the fear into something else like excitement, and I've heard that from someone else as well when they go public speaking and they have these like butterflies, like you said, butterflies in the stomach, and instead of like, oh, wait a second, I think it was actually Simon Sinek. He said that he's like, look, I'm a terrible public speaker, and everyone was like, what? You're great, like why and everything, like you're awesome. Like, no, I'm terrible at it. It's like, but I chose to, you put like in transmute, like I chose to change the perspective on the narrative of what fear is when I go and speak, instead of like, oh, I'm not stressed right now. I don't have fear of public speaking. I have that's excitement. I'm excited about it. And literally by just changing perspective on that, it just empowers like how you react to it. Because now you should look at it from not a fear-based perspective, but from this joyful excitement. Because like who doesn't want to be excited about something, right? So like it's simply just like even shifting that. So I love how you use that, transmuting it from fear to excitement. What other things have you done to like other maybe methods or techniques or just the way you do things to help yourself deal with those things that may negatively impact you? How do you deal with those things?
Oh, wow. I have lots of tools in my toolbox. But one that comes to mind really quickly is, and I'll share a short experience. I was choosing to go into a relationship after my child's father and I split up. And it had been 5-6 years since I had opened up my heart. I was so closed, and opening it up for the first time is terrifying. So all my stories started to come up, and I was trying to reject the one thing I wanted, which was love and connection, because just that underlying terror. And there were so many patterns within our relationship that were unhealthy. And I had to, I realized, I was like, okay, something in me is creating this. So I took some time, I grabbed a journal, and I wrote out every single thought that I had that was not from a state of love. So whatever fear-based thought, I'm talking about 2 pages, because we can never change something we're not conscious of. And the only way to become conscious of it is to find it, write it down, and see it on paper and be like, oh, wow, because then it can't control us anymore when that story pops up. And that's how I've learned how to move through the stories. So I wrote down every single limiting belief and limiting thought that I had surrounding the relationship. And it's really good to break it up, whether it's your relationship, your career, and into different categories. And then I wrote out every single pattern that we had that was unhealthy and the dynamic of what was happening. And I was able to connect my patterns with him to the same patterns I had with my father. And it's like this whole replay, because our subconscious mind is a sponge, and we learned through our childhood. So I was recreating the same experience with this man in order to create the mental addiction in my mind. So then after I went through all the patterns and became conscious of that, I then started to write a new story. I was like, what do I want to experience? How do I want him to show up for me? How do I want to show up for him? And I just wrote a beautiful love story, and because it was the first step of manifestation. Okay, if my mind is just pretty much a program, like a computer program, and Kaspersky is the way to swipe out the fear and all these judgments and beliefs, what do I want to program in there? And literally, you have to read it often to remind yourself, and because those stories are going to come back up. But once you're conscious of it, you don't allow it to control you anymore. So there's no way to really, I never was able to move through the fear until I became conscious of why and how, the stories around it. So that was one of the biggest tools that really transformed our relationship and my life, because I apply it in so many different other areas.
That's amazing what you just said, because it's just so important. I started journaling some time ago, and it was kind of on and off, but it is so important to put things on paper. And my take on it is, because when we think, it's like things are happening very fast, because you can jump from a narrative to narrative. You're like, oh, here, following things, and then all these different things pop up. When you write things down, you literally have to put it through like a funnel, because you can't have all these, because you can't write it out the same way you think. So it has to go through some kind of a filter and integration a process before you start putting words down on the paper. So it kind of solidifies, what am I really thinking about, and just kind of solidifies it in a real form. So I like that. I also like the analytical part that you did over there, kind of like looking at it from different perspectives, and then rewriting the story, because it literally is a narrative that is running in your brain, right? And you're like, no, this is the story that I want to manifest. This is the story that I want to believe, and I want this story to run in here, right? In this programming, and then then that you almost like manifest it into being by, I don't know, whether it's physical or metaphysical or whatever you believe in. It just, now that that's when you have that healthy story running in your brain, then you kind of roll with that instead of all these other things that are happening. So I love that. And then what you said is, I wanted to tap into that and talk about it. But we both have kids, and you said like when you were growing up and you have these little micro events that happen that shape us, right? And later on in life, we see that like, wow, I'm doing this because this is what happened when I was a kid. Now that we have kids, I have like this super, like, and my wife constantly, she's a mental health counselor, so she reminds me about this constantly, and it is so important. What we say, what we do, we have to be so mindful and so watch how we behave and how we do, because those little critters, they just absorb, like you said, like a sponge as well. They just get all these things, and then we may knowingly or unknowingly shape them by our actions, right? Like you said, like, yo, you're on the phone, daddy was on the phone, and you wanted to talk to him, and he kind of like was on the phone and ignored you and everything, like, and then you may jump into this conclusion like, oh, maybe I'm just not important. And it is so important. So with your kids, what do you do to be mindful of that? Because knowing what to do is different than doing it, remembering to do it all the time, right? And that's like the biggest fear and I guess foible of me, that I well educated in certain things, but like just reminding myself that, oh wow, in this moment, this is what I should do. This is what I should do. So I always ask my guests, what is it that they do to remind themselves to do those things that they wanted to do in the first place? What do you do?
Well, I'm very mindful. So when I'm connecting with her, I pay attention to her behavior, because if there is a behavior shift and her energy changes, I know she was triggered in some way. I don't try to help her through everything, but I try to understand, and I kind of look back, I'm like, well, what could I have said? And how could I reframe that differently? Like if she comes to me and I'm in the middle of a conversation and she's trying to interrupt my phone call, that's a business call and it's really important, I'll say, can you hold on? And I put the phone call on hold, and I tell her, mommy is really busy and she's doing some work. I really want to connect with you, but I really want to give you my undivided attention. Do you mind if I finish this call so then mommy can play with you as soon as I'm done? So it's really explaining what's unfolding instead of giving space for her to create this story of I'm not good enough. So I remind her, like, you come first and I love you. And as soon as I finish this call, I'm going to come and give you everything I have. And I fall short all the time. And the biggest thing is having grace for myself, because then I can go into an energetic loop to where her behavior dictates how I'm feeling about myself. And then I can no longer hold an energetic field or safe space for her anymore. And it just perpetuates this cycle. Because like when you're talking about earlier about me, and my shift in transmuting anxiety into love, because everything's energy, right? So, I mean, Tesla and Einstein has proven this, that every single thing that exists that we see vibrates at a certain frequency, and it's all energy. So whenever I'm holding space for her, if I meet her down at her level, if I go down into her fear, like whatever those unpleasant emotions are, we're going to perpetuate that fear-based cycle instead of me holding a sacred space of an energetic field that helps her feel safe. And I think that's one of the I think that's something we're lacking in society, that we really need to learn how to teach this to our children, because it's just been passed down century after century, and parents and, we're all doing the best we know how to do, right? We only have the tools that we were given based on our childhood.
Right.
And one of the things that we can do for our children is to separate ourselves from the triggers that like their emotional experience and stop making it about us, and show up and hold a safe space for them to truly express their emotions and let them self-express. Because if we don't, what they learn is to suppress and push those emotions down to where they don't learn how to deal with them, to express them, to release that energy, because emotions are only energy. And typically, if you repress, that negative energy can affect your body. So it's really just, I try to learn, I'm still learning. It's something I'm practicing, of learning to hold a safe space for my child to come talk to me. There's, I had this one conversation, and it's come up 2 or 3 times. My daughter comes to me and I'm like, what's going on, honey? What's on your heart? And she was like, I feel like I don't want you as my mommy, because I had to discipline her and teach her something. And I was like, I understand how you feel. I was like, I understand. I was like, there's moments I thought that about my mommy too. And I was like, but the thing is, those feelings will pass through and you'll realize and reconnect with that love. So I don't make her wrong for what she's feeling. And I tell her that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be these things, as long as I'm not taking that anger out on somebody else. Like, we have to learn how to be with those experiences. So it's a long journey. And children, my daughter is the reason for my transformation, because if it wasn't her, I would not be the woman I am today.
How so?
Because all my coping mechanisms that I had, there was an experience that I was in the middle of, and it was with my eating disorder. And she walked in, she was 2 years old. And it was this huge epiphany. And that's what led me to fall to my knees and ask for help. Because she literally, in my mind, I was like, oh my God, I'm teaching her to do the same thing, or I'm going to die and she's not going to have a mother. And she deserves the best life in the world. Like, she's a little angel in my life, this pure perfection. And in that moment, I was like, I have so, like, my mind is so strong. Once I make a decision, I was like, I'm going to be the best me I could possibly be, because she deserves so much more. So
it's like they're little angels that are being sent to us, to teachers, kids. It's the purity with which they come in is just amazing. Watching our daughter and how she looks at things and how she processes. It's only like when society and this life kind of downloads all the programming onto them, what they should or should not do, or what they can and cannot do, is what creates that box in which they live for the rest of their life. So it is so important to kind of give them that perspective, that they and something to help them be like they are a child. Like, I think, even since you mentioned Bible, I think even in the Bible, it said that you want to become like a child again, right? Because it's like, because they do come with this purity of the spirit of just taking everything in before these filters that we install in our this operating system over here, and so that's they're great teachers, and but we just have to be mindful how we interact with them, so we don't spoil them. Keep those gates open for them so they can be who they are. My wife constantly reminds me about that, and I'm so grateful for that, because it is so important. It's so true. The other thing that what you just said over here right now, that kind of connected over here, is the way my wife frames it is giving yourself permission to have these emotions or feelings. So it's not, you're not angry, you have anger in you, or you're experiencing anger. You're not angry. It's just an emotion. It's a feeling that comes in, and like a wave, it's going to dissipate and move on. And I think even reframing how you deal with your emotions will help you literally deal with them. Just looking at them as something that's happening to you, that's not who you are. Like, if you're angered by something, you're not an angry person. It's just an anger happening to you at that moment. And if you realize that emotion, you can create this space between this experience and that emotion, and then you can kind of almost like watch it, like, oh, hi, I see you, and then form that kind of even relationship in which it's not like this antagonistic relationship, like, oh, rah, 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 rah.
Yeah. Exactly. And the only reason why we resist it is because the stories we've created around the anger. And it could be different emotions for different people. Anger is one of mine. Like, I wasn't allowed to feel anger in my household because my parents weren't really comfortable with their own. So when I would show up angry, I chose, but in that situation as a child, I was forced to suppress it. And I wasn't allowed to express it. So when we can remove the stories around the anger, it becomes okay to be angry. But, like, because that's a part of our experience, and we have to honor our experience and what we're feeling in order to transmute that energy. And like you brought up journaling, and journaling is such an amazing thing to transmute that energy, and sometimes to really figure out how we feel. Like, because I have situations and experiences that I didn't even realize triggered me in the moment. But when I sit down in front of a piece of paper and I start to write, I'm like, oh, wow, that really upset me, because of that immediate response of repression or suppression. So repression it's an automatic response, and we don't feel the negative emotion. It's just an automatic coping mechanism to where we stuff it deep. And then suppression is, I feel the anger and then I choose not to be with it, and I push it down, and I try to intellectualize why I was angry and why it's not okay, and I need to be grateful for everything around me, instead of surrendering to the emotion of anger and saying it's okay to be angry, and hold that little child inside of you and give yourself permission to honor, because your feelings are sacred. They're an expression of you. And the more we can be more comfortable with our own emotional experience, we then can hold space for other people, and we can have more empathy, and we can connect, right? Because if I'm judging myself for the experiences or the emotions that I have, I can only judge others when they're in that state too, because it's a projection, right? If I'm not comfortable holding space for myself, I'll never be able to really do it for them. And that's been a huge journey and learning experience for me as well, because my addiction for 15 years was to cover that experience, and it was food, it was working out, it was running, it was so many things that I used to numb myself, because I was so afraid of this experience, which, like, I had an experience the other day, and I went into my girlfriend's bedroom, and I was like, whew, I know exactly why people run from I was reminded why people run from their internal experience, because I had a huge release. And before it comes up, it feels terrifying because we're not used to it. We're not used to that energetic sensation in our body. But surrendering to it and then crying and whatever you have to do is one of the most beautiful experiences. Like, to know that, there's two sides of every coin. We can't have the night without the day. The moon is always chasing the sun, and this beautiful cycle of duality and, opposites that are actually just one. There's no separate. And if we deny one aspect of ourselves, we're actually denying our whole self. We're denying self. We're denying God, its true expression of who it is or who we are. I have goosebumps for that one.
Me too. It's like the moment before you said about duality, that was going to be my next question. I said, like, what do you think about that? Because it is just, oh my goodness, this blowing me away. I had a guest who wrote a book. He's a medical doctor, an emergency room doctor, Anup Kumar, and he wrote this book. Is this all a dream? Are we in a dream? Kind of, and we were talking about. He talks about the duality and the non-duality, and we talked about duality, and people have. A lot of people have this, and I had that too. People have this approach to things that we need to eliminate. Stress, right? We should just eliminate it. The gut reaction is like, oh, I'm stressed out. I need to eliminate. I need to do something to fight it off in a way, right? And so, but the issue is that all these, like you said, all these things have two sides of the coin. There's no darkness without light. There's no light without darkness. There's no happiness without sadness. We're defined by the others. There is no crest without a trough. There would be no waves. One defines the other. Male, female, light, dark, good, bad, sad, happy. All these different things. Without them, you wouldn't be like two sides of a coin. There's no one-sided coin. They have to be together.
Yeah.
And when we realize that one is necessary to define the other, that's when we're like, oh, so we just need to form a relationship with that other side, with that opposite to whatever it is. But the key point is not to try to destroy it or eliminate it in some way, because you can't do that. It's only when we come back to that oneness, to that ultimate awareness, God, that space, that's when you have the unity of everythingness. But in our realm, in this space that we are in, manifested, whatever happens, things are defined by dualities. Things are defined by these opposites. And so when you mentioned that, I was like, wow, I want to talk about that. This is just so awesome.
And then there comes, like, I'm going through this transition, and I have been for a while, of rectifying the separation between the two and realizing it is all one. And until we create that union, we'll still be in separation because of that judgment. And it's that barrier of, okay, we got to remove that fear and realize that is who I am, like we can't be one with anyone unless we're one with ourselves, So.
And it's so true. And even, you see, like, even vocabulary that you used over here, the words in describing, stress or anxiety and transmuting it, it's transmutation. It's not elimination of one for the sake of the other. It's like really flowing. It's just like a, wave crashing, and then it falls into the opposite of it. So it's like you have that. So it's transmutation of one into the other. It's so critical to have that kind of mindset. My biggest thing is, as I kind of learn about these things and I accept them and I talk to people who have the same kind of journey, because I believe that we all are kind of like on the same journey to kind of discover that. And that's the part of our slow enlightenment to get to that point. And my thing is, how do I remember this? How do I reprogram my brain to see that and not get into these entrenched reactions that we have? Like, if something happens and you just you sink into that reaction that you've this habit that you formed throughout your life. And the key for me is, like, how do I remember that, and how do I rewire my brain so that next time something like this happens, I don't fall back into this automatic response and then regret it. And so that's my journey right now. And I'm curious, like, what you do. Sounds like journaling is one aspect of it, where you can kind of process and integrate it and remind yourself and kind of have a different perspective to have that introspection. Oh, wow, like you said, I was really upset by that, what just happened. Why? And let's just change that narrative so you can kind of reprogram your brain so it kind of takes that new story up into your brain. What other things do you do? Do you have any kind of routines or something that you do as a form of a habitual response to like what's happening around you? Like, I don't know. Do you do anything else to kind of remind yourself?
Oh, yeah, I do multiple things. Every single morning, I start with a ceremony. And since I do it every day, it really is a ritual. And it's really bringing that practice, which is my sacred space, is my time to become mindful. And the more I do that, the more I can be mindful in the day, throughout the day. Because how we start our day is how we're going to live the rest of our day. So I have a prayer closet with a beautiful altar with candles and things that just light me on fire and like make me feel amazing. I'll start by lighting an incense and like dancing around the room and really falling into that childlike state. And then I light candles. I go into meditation, and the meditation typically changes just depending on what my spirit is calling for. It could be a silent meditation. It could be binaural beats or hollow sync. There's a lot of different tools that I use for that. And I typically meditate for 30 minutes. I have the best results, and I think reality completely transforms itself when I can find at least an hour. But the state of love and like embodying that I can reach it, within 30, 45 minutes, sometimes 2-3 minutes, just depending. And that's what dictates how long I actually meditate for. And then like that's what I do every single day, and I pray as well. I forgot that one, but, throughout the day, like if I find myself being triggered, one of the biggest things that I try to practice is take 5 seconds. Like monks, the first thing they learn is return to the breath. So when we are triggered, it's typically triggering our central nervous system, which makes us go into this fight or flight because it's that story that's connecting to safety or whatever. So I sit there and I'm like, I just breathe at least for 5 seconds and try, there's times I completely fall short, and I don't do that. But when I do practice that, it transforms like the entire experience because I'm like, oh, it could have gone this way, but thankfully I learned to breathe and we have a whole different experience. And I think that is the foundation because, we can't create a new future without releasing the past. And we can't release the past until we change these filters and these stories because we're creating the future in the present moment with every thought. So we really like doing these sacred practices or rituals or whatever you want to call it is so important for us to really to let go of who we thought we were in order to become all that we actually are.
That's man, it's like telepathy. I just you're speaking everything. I'm like, wow, it's like this is like everything. It's like almost like I'm emanating what you're saying, and you're saying what I'm emanating. It's just amazing to me right now because
we're all one.
Yeah, we are one, and that's the realization. This is a moment where this is just happening, and meditation, how you start your day. Literally, when I wake up and I look out the window and I see this beautiful view. And I just realized like, wow, and just that mindset, like I can't be upset about like my life or anything. It's like, look at this. It's just gorgeous, just perfect. And that just starts the day. If you just wake up and you're like, I'm angered by something, or like you get on your phone right away and all these different narratives are just invading your brain. And then if one of them is triggering you in some way, then the rest of the day is kind of the harmonic repeat of that going to in your life. So ritual, yeah, I absolutely agree. Breathing, key, if you can remember that when kind of stressful situations happen, because like when we are stressed, we tend to go to this reptilian brain mode, part of like just this flight or fight mode that you mentioned, right? That's key. So just kind of reminding yourself to kind of sidestep that and just breathing is such a great tool.
Yeah.
And a routine, yeah, that's meditation. I like what you said, that you meditate for as long as it, as you get to that point of that transformational moment of, oh, okay, it's like I arrived, right? And sometimes it could be just a couple of minutes, and sometimes it may take an hour to get to that. Yeah, wow. It's great. Another thing that I was kind of thinking about in terms of like reminding myself is kind of like either prayer beads or something that you can have something tactile on you, whether it's like a ring that you can touch, something that you can kind of almost like a muscle memory. So like you can almost condition yourself that when something happens that you want to kind of deal with, you either touch it or you play with it or you have something that kind of through a tactile interface, tactile connection, reminds you to like, oh, I should breathe now, I should do this or that and the other. Do you have anything like that? Or because I was actually really thinking about like that's why we have like whether it's jewelry or something you wear like a bracelet, and it's that token, it's that sacred token that kind of like helps you get back to it.
Yeah, I do have some prayer beads, and I was just thinking about, I wish I would have shared that, and you brought it up. We're so in tune with each other right now.
It's like one mind.
Yeah. So these prayer beads have, I think it's like 106 beads on them. And, I was using affirmations for a really long time, and they feel really good at first, but then they never really sustained. And I didn't understand why. So I started researching a little bit more. And, monks have these prayer beads, and they focus on a certain meditate or a certain affirmation, and they go through and say it 106 times, but they're not only speaking it, they're visualizing in their mind of what it looks like to be that. And then they cultivate the feeling. So if it's, I'm deserving of love, it's like, okay, I'm saying I'm worthy of love. I'm visualizing what that looks like, and then I start to embody the emotion and internal experience of what it feels like to be worthy of love, because that's where the reprogramming happens, because we can't think are there, we have to also, because we exist mentally, physically, spiritually, when we can combine all three realms, it literally transforms the experience and helps it become part of the program. So that's something that I do a lot.
That's just amazing. It's amazing how on the same wavelength we are, and I believe that a lot of people are on that same journey to get to that. It's just peeling those layers of, it's like a societal plaque that just builds up on our emanation over here, and then we're like, how do we shed this? How do we get that off? To kind of get back to that source that we are, manifestation of. And then when we are in that place, everything just feels just so right. Everything just feels like, don't worry about it. Like, don't, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. Yeah. It's like that soothing place where you are, and then you're like, wow. Why was I so upset about this tiny little thing that just kind of derailed me?
Yeah.
So even those moments, you have to cherish them, because they are little teachers that come to our lives. Like, why did I get upset over this tiny little thing? Like, oh, you didn't take a spoon out of this, or and you're like, rah, 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 and you're like watching this unfolding, and before you, like, oh, wow, okay, that's just weird. So go ahead.
To me, like those little experiences, like when, like, say, I'm going to pretend like I'm your wife and you did that with the fork or whatever, and you got upset. To me, like, I'm really trying to see that fully, that experience, as your expression of love, and to love you more deeply and be like, there goes Adrian being Adrian, like fully accept, instead of judging the moment, because we're so taught to judge because this negative experience is triggering me. It's that reprogramming of, damn, he's amazing. Like, you know what? I'm so happy he does not like the forks the way they are, and finding appreciation instead of judging to create more separation.
Yeah. So. Again, this goes back to that changing of the perspective of like what is happening and unfolding in front of us, right? You can really choose that moment. I think it was Shakespeare said, like, there's no good or bad or what mind makes it so, because you literally can decide. Like, you can literally, and it goes into like all different levels. It can be psychological and be physical too. Like, there's this saying of like, oh, I'm going to worry myself sick, or she worried herself sick. Literally, those things and thoughts like literally can have emanations and a manifestation in your physical body. You can literally make yourself sick, and that is just so true. And it's almost like a secret. Like it's a saying that people know, but they just kind of like, they might even say it, and they don't realize how true that is. And that this is like piece of wisdom that someone said, like, yeah, like literally you can make yourself sick. Maybe you can make yourself die, because it's like you. And so this goes back to like how people, this should be like part of teaching. This should be like, kids should be, if not by parents, then in schools or both. It should be like part of our life to like, hey, this is the journey. You have to remember these things. Like everything matters. So you have to like be really vigilant and mindful of everything, because it does affect everything else. So it's amazing.
Yeah. So we can tie that back to energy, because the emotions that we're feeling are energy. And if we resist something, it persists. So the more we push against and don't want to experience, the more we're going to have it, and the more we're going to hold on to it. And that energy vibrates at a very low frequency. So if we continue to have those emotional experiences and we hold on to those stories, it then manifests as sickness in the body. And I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton. He wrote a book called Biology of Belief. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He teaches this, that his science is showing how much our environment affects our cells. It's not genetics. There's I think
epigenetics.
He said percent. Huh?
Yeah. I think he's really into like epigenetics and how the genes can manifest themselves literally around like what's happening. Yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
That's right. And our environment really, and our environment, emotional state, that affects every cell in our body. Our mind is a contractor of what we're going to experience. So really getting in tune and realizing that it's only energy, and we're only energy, emotions only energy. We can transform in our health. I've seen people have huge breakthroughs on the health level in certain sicknesses once they release that energy. I'll share an experience. Like after my ex and I split up, I was resistant to my grief, my shame, and my guilt to that relationship not working, because I was like, wow, I created the same thing for my daughter. Like my parents split up when I was younger. I did not have a menstrual cycle for 3 years. 3 years.
Wow.
And one day I'm driving down the road, and the Holy Spirit, God, whatever was speaking to me, which I believe the Holy Spirit, said, it's time. And I was like, it's time right now. I'm driving over a bridge, and I just start crying. And I have this huge, ugly release, like sobbing hysterically. And as soon as I was done, my period started.
Wow.
Like, it was
so literally manifested. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And and we hear these anecdotes of how people heal themselves, and some people call them miracles, and so on. As kind of human beings and our experience with like science, and we want to dissect everything into like what and I think even with like reality itself, like what is it right now? Even scientists, and I hear this more and more. This is just an anecdote. This is just the way I see it. Is even scientists get to the point that they're like, well, fuck, this looks just like magic. I don't know. It's just like we can't, they're like looking down, like they're splitting atoms. They're looking at like you got quarks, you got some subatomical patterns, and particles, and they're like splitting even further, and it's like, what's here? It's just kind of some kind of like, some of the theories are like the string theory, like everything is just kind of these strings that are just vibrating, and depending on how they vibrate, that's how what manifests into what we see as atoms and reality, and so on. So again, just going back to that same topic, that same theme of like everything is like just this vibrational energy that just, and depending on how it vibrates, frequencies, how it transmutes from one frequency to another, this is what kind of manifests that itself as a matter. And those are kind of like the that's from the scientific perspective. But even they're looking at this like, shit, this is just like magical. Like this is like, like we can't and we can't even dissect this even more. Like these are the limits. So even like scientists are getting, I feel like the pendulum is swinging back into this more of a spiritual connection of like, hey, we can't deductively explain everything that's happening in reality. Therefore, there is a space where science and kind of like the spiritual aspects are kind of slowly getting closer and closer and closer together, and actually even starting to intertwine, because that's maybe the truth as well. Like, like we just can't explain certain things, maybe beyond, maybe once we shed these corporeal experiences and we go back to this one unity, then it will be like, we will understand all of it. And that was actually one of my experiences when I was in one of the sessions, ketamine sessions. It was this beautiful moment where I was shown sort of like how everything folds into everything else. Like I'm folding into something else. Like these almost like fractal patterns of like that we see in nature constantly. Like a leaf of a fern or a branch of a fern with the little leaves, and they look like a copy of the big of the branch. And then you look at it, it's just like this repeating pattern and these fractals everywhere. And then I had this moment of like, hey, wow. I was kind of shown this. It felt like it, the spirit, universe, awareness, this infinite computer was just showing me all of this. I was like, wow, now I understand. And then I had this beautiful moment, so humbling. I cherish it. I tell it to all my friends and guests. I said, oh, wow, now I understand, as if I really understand from this limited perspective that I'm in right now. I was like, oh, I really understand. And then I had this message. It wasn't like a voice of God that like, oh, and like, James Earl Jones or someone's G. Burton, like, oh. No, it was like this nonverbal message that was just said to me. It said like, you think you understand? You don't understand. And it was just so humbling. It was just so beautiful. And I remind myself of it because I think it's when we think we understand everything, that's when a lot of times we get into trouble, because we look at this from a very limited perspective. And we should just remember that, acknowledge that, and remember, because if you have that position that you're like, wow, okay, well, you said is interesting, but that's it. And what I think is just a perspective of it. It's not the totality of everything, but we take these positions which are very definitive. I'm right, you're wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. You're here, I'm there. Like all these dualities, and I think when we have this capacity of looking at different perspectives, that's when we can cope with a lot of things. Like I cherish talking to different guests who have different opinions, who have different experiences, who have different knowledge, and every one of these is a different perspective that I get educated, and I love it because it reminds me that you are not like, this is not, your opinion is not like definitive. It's just an opinion. It's just like you don't know. You think you know, you don't know. That's why it just resonates so much in my brain.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. It's a beautiful experience.
I think these, and so this kind of swings me back into like the conversation about plant medicine, psychedelics, and what's happening. I feel like there was a renaissance where we are going back into exploring what these master plant teachers can offer to us, and shift our awareness and shift our spirituality as a whole society, as a whole planet. And I see that more and more. I don't know, maybe it's just my confirmation bias, because I do talk to a lot of people that are in that space where they have experienced it, and whether they deal with combat veterans who deal with PTSD, and they go through like either this plant like ayahuasca or ketamine, or all these different plant medicines that can help them change the perspective or like see things and kind of integrate stuff. I feel like there is a shift, a renaissance, a coming back of us looking back at those tools, because they are like really tools. They're teachers that will help us deal with, this plaque of social that we built up on ourselves throughout our lives, and I hope that's what's gonna happen. Wow. Okay. Enough of rambling on that topic. Rania, tell me a little bit more about the podcast, and so let's switch gears into that a little bit. And what are some of the challenges of starting a podcast that you've experienced so far? Who's going to be your audience that you're seeking to kind of spread this messages that you have? What is the format that the podcast is going to be in? Tell us a little bit more about that.
All right. Thank you. Well, some challenges have been, one, because I'm in the middle of creating so many different things right now and learning how to just dive in and surrender to the universe and allow it to create through me. Like lining up my schedule with other people's schedule, that's been a challenge. I know that's kind of a small challenge, but just taking on something new is so challenging for anyone because we've never done it before. So there's all these things we have to learn. And I have this pattern, I've identified a pattern when I would go so far and then I would stop because of that fear of failure and not knowing, because I've never done it before, and really going through with this and like breaking through it and just breaking down the steps and leaning on other people have really helped me, like asking for help or, because I never asked for help either. So those have been a couple challenges. I think... What are some other challenges? I think that's really it. Maybe worrying what other people are going to think, like, because I'm really raw and open and share things that I haven't really shared with the world. I share with people in person when it's like an intimate setting or whatever. Right. So being unguarded in front of the world is kind of scary, but freeing as well, because I know I want to connect, and the other women in the group with me want to connect further with the world, to share their stories, to share their truths. Like you said, we all have different truths and we all have different experiences. So not everybody's going to resonate with what I share and what I teach based on my learnings, but they may connect with Mariah. They may connect with Jessica. So in a safe space for people, for men, for women to come to hear what we have gone through and what we're learning and what we have learned in order to really awaken to the truth of who we all are and to really reunite for that unity and that love. So it's really just a collaboration for the collective experience, for raising the consciousness of humanity, right? So right now there's 3 of us. It's myself, Rania DiBacco, and my girlfriend, Mariah Kane, and Jessica Banks. 3 completely different perspectives. Mariah and I are a lot alike. Jessica and I have a lot of similar experiences, but we're completely different. So it's really interesting to show up and create this sacred place of love and understanding, because typically with man's understanding of religion, except like not what it was meant to do, but what we've used it for, was to prove other people wrong. And I'm right, you're wrong. You have to follow my path. but to really feel fully accepted in this group and to be able to express and help other people tap into their truths. Because some people, I lived 30 years not knowing what my truths were. I was allowing the outside world to influence what I believed and what I wanted. And this is to strip back all the social conditioning and to have deeper intimacy in our relationships, to have a better connection with ourselves, to be a better mother, a better friend, a better sister, to dive into what it is we really want to create in the world, to give people permission to create the best life that they could ever imagine. You know, like, I don't know, that's where we are with it. I know that we talked about the other day, us going off and, like, say it could be me and Mariah, we're going to go off and start interviewing other people, or Jessica and myself, or them two, or even individually, because we want to bring in more perspectives and we want to really help other people speak their truths. You know, we just want to bring authenticity to the world and help people just truly express without fear.
Oh my goodness. I feel like so strongly about that, because that's what I'm striving to do on this show. When people's like, well, who did you interview last time? I'm like, I really shy away from this interview word, because it feels like I see it more as a conversation. Like what we have right now is just exchange of ideas and thoughts, and it's a two-way street versus like interviewers. There's like an interviewee and interviewer. This is not it. It's like we're again going back to this oneness of like, you know, expressions of like you and I, and connectedness to everything. And if you look at it from that perspective, then it's just a dialogue. It's just a conversation. And again, everyone is just so eye-opening when you talk to people, and they just open up. They let themselves be, they give themselves the permission to be vulnerable and talk about things. In fact, I'm going to kind of plug this on my own show to the audience. I'm going to plug this in. I'm going to have I already had one candidate for Senate over here, so a politician, and talking to her, just amazingly different perspective about that we have about politicians, and again, seeing who that person is as a person. And not this, oh, you're going to be a senator, or you're going to be this or that. This, again, just kind of like new thing that they put on socially. And I think that's what's needed right now, and to transform, to help everybody else, society and everything to transform, to listen to these types of conversations so people can get to know somebody else, understand them more, see who they are, see those people when they are vulnerable and they share things like that. And I think goosebumps. Yeah. Right. I just showed her arm, and it's like, yeah, goosebumps. That, because that's so true, just resonates. And so I'm so happy that you're doing it, because there's it's needed. It's needed for a lot of people to do this. And my next question to you is like, how do you feel? Like, do you feel like there's too many podcasts? Because that's another thing that when I talk to some people, like, well, there's millions and millions of podcasts, and I'm like, great. I think everybody should do their podcast, whether it's like therapeutic to you just to talk to someone, or if it's just for you to learn about something. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I hope that and I know that everybody deep inside is. That's what makes us want to grow. And so, like, if podcast is your thing to tap into that, then you should do it. I always encourage it, because I think it allows you to grow. You get different perspectives. You connect with different people. You really are changing, and then in turn they have that space that in where they can change as well. So I'm so glad that you're doing your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Like, the moment somebody tells me like there's so many out there, I'm like, yeah. And because that's a scarcity mindset to me, to think that because there's so many out there, I can't be successful. You know, like, no. Law of attraction, I believe that because we all vibrate at a certain frequency, and I'm going to draw in, our group is going to draw in those people that are vibrating at the same wavelength, that need the message, that maybe people that are seeking, and, you know, they resonate with us. Like, I just feel like whatever you want to create, go out there and create it with no shits given what other people think, because that is really what holds us back from our true expression, worrying about, you know, the competition out there, when there's so much abundance in this world that we just have to be able to receive it with removing those scarcity beliefs of, oh, somebody's already doing it. Oh, you know, just those things that stop us from moving forward. Right.
I shouldn't do it because someone already did it. Someone already said it and all of that. And I believe that I had a guest recently, Veterans of War, nonprofit, and he works with combat veterans and tries to help them with their anxieties and PTSD and through like ayahuasca ceremonies and journey, but also through like creating a social support network for them. So it's not only the experience of the ceremony of ayahuasca, but also like how do you integrate that later, and then social support network for 6 months to kind of continue on changing and literally rewiring their own brains, right? Starting a new life in a sense. So it's unbelievable. And he said, and I asked him about how do you scale this? How do you make this propagate so you can help more people? There's about 100 suicides every day. 20 of them are veterans, and like how do you want to grow this so like more people can be given the opportunity to save themselves? And he said, like, you know what? It's not about the numbers. Like every life matters. Every life matters. It's like the success is not necessarily in numbers. It's in like everyone that has been saved or went on a different path is a success. And so, and let me tie this in together too with what you said, a number of podcasts. Yeah. So it's great that there is more of them, because everybody's going to be resonating to maybe different frequencies, how you present things, the conversations that you will have with your co-host, the way I do things, the way, my co-host does these things. Those are like different types of like perspectives and frequencies that some people will tap to this, some people will tap into that, some people will tap into both of them. But they will have that choice. And so I say the more the merrier, because someone is going to find, and if there's one person out of this show that we're doing right now, if there's one person that listens to this and it changes their life and they will choose to start a podcast, and that podcast is going to explode and it's going to be huge and it's going to change other lives, this was the inception of it right here. And if we would have not done it, then that future would not exist as well. So.
Exactly. I feel the same way. And I feel, I think I'm writing a book, and that's in my book, talking about that. Like, I was like, if this book only changes like one person's life, it is worth it. If I had to go through all the pain I have been through of the eating disorder, being molested, being like all these traumas, if it changed one person's life, it was worth it. If I could help and connect and make one person feel safe and loved, it was so worth it. And you're talking about success in numbers. If we can find that successful feeling and embodiment of helping the one, the more will follow, because we're vibrating abundance and success. So it's like opening up to receive more instead of focusing on what we don't have. Because if I'm like, oh, I only have 3 subscribers and that's not enough, I'm going to stay in lack versus, oh my God, I have 3. I'm so excited I can speak to 3 people. And it transforms reality. It transforms like our entire experience, allows us to really receive.
Yeah, it's so important to focus on that and not just the stats. And unfortunately, because like this business world of like, oh, how big you are, how many subscribers do you have, are you a social influencer, and all these different like almost business like perspectives. It's like you have to always remember, why is it that you're doing this? And when I talk to people, it's like, hey, I just enjoy this. I really love this. I think it's like my wife calls it like it's very therapeutical for you too. It's and it is, yeah. And it is. I love it. I get the energy. I love talking to people, getting their perspectives and knowledge and everything, and sharing that with others. And if it helps someone, great. And so I think it's important to kind of get back to that and focus. Well, right now, then we've been going on for like an hour and 15 minutes, and I could go on forever with you again and again. I because agree. There's just so much. There's great energy in this, and I'd love to be. I'd love to host you on this podcast again. Heck, I'd love to be on your show as well and chat with your other co-hosts. Now that you mentioned them, I was like, oh, I'd love to hear their perspectives and how they are, resonating with everything. It's your time right now. Give a shout out to the people out there, whoever's listening or watching this, about your upcoming podcast, and your website. AuthenticallySpoken.com is where you can find out more information about this upcoming podcast that's launching on the 22nd. And I'm going to give the mic back to you right now to kind of tell a little bit more to the people that are listening to this.
Well, thank you, Adrian. I just want to say thank you so much for listening and being here with us today. I know that time is such a valuable commodity, and that you chose to be here with us now means so much to me. And I hope that you could choose to take some time. May 22nd, we are launching our podcast, Authentically Spoken, and that's at authenticallyspoken.com. You can go ahead and sign up right now if you go to that website. It's just a landing page right now. Well, you can put your email address in there, and we're going to stay in contact with you and start developing a relationship and really like connect on a deeper level. And I'm just really excited to connect with everyone. And also, Adrian, if you can have me back on the show, I would be so blessed and excited, because we're also on the journey of Authentically Spoken. We're also creating Sacred Serenity, which a branch of Sacred Serenity. We have Sacred Serenity Sisters, and that is going to be a safe space for women to come together with non-judgment and removing the competition and the jealousy and the envy, and coming to a safe space to create a sisterhood, a relationship with each other. Because I feel like with my experience, there's a lot of fear between women. And, like a lot of us also look to men to validate our worth. And this is really going to help us disconnect from that, to really step into our worthiness and to resurrect our divine feminine, and also feel comfortable to coalesce, I can't even say that word, the energies of our masculine and our feminine. And what it's going to do is really help us step more fully into our relationships with men and with our parents, with anybody, to show up authentically and not be reliant on other people for our internal peace, our internal love, which allows the union to grow much stronger. So we're just really excited. We're piecing all that together now. And I just can't wait to come on and share more about that.
I would love to talk about that. I really think that maybe we're at the onset of again, that pendulum swinging back from like the male dominated to the feminine, and again, it's a cycle, it's a pattern. It was there like that in the past. We've seen cultures in the past where it was like the feminine energy was leading it, and then it became masculine, and now it's kind of swinging back. So looking forward to hearing more about that and how you guys going to implement this. Is it going to be like in person? Oh, maybe now with the whole COVID pandemic and everything, is it going to be like virtual where women can connect on like I don't know, any of these teleconferencing spaces where you guys just talk, or how do you see this happening?
We are going to be virtual. We're also going to have live events. I'm confident in knowing that this is going to turn around and we're going to start to be able to connect again. And we may even start off with small, intimate events right now, because I know we're allowed to have, I think it's like up to 8 or 10 people at a gathering. So we're going to have the events. We're going to have the online presence. We're going to connect with emails. We're going to connect with online courses. There's a huge vision for it. So it's going to be an unfolding and a slow process. But one of the deepest things, like the in-person events, I think are so important, because that's where we find this deeper connection, and we can come together and use our energies to really heal. And we're working on something called, we won't go too far into it, but we're learning and coming up with techniques that are going to really help us use sexual energy. So it's like intimacy with self to transmute the energy of sexual trauma, and not even just sexual trauma, any kind of trauma. So it's really bringing a whole new sense of realization and comfort and love around our own sensuality, and to feel comfortable within our own skin. We've been shamed, and not on purpose, but just this society conditioning. Of not feeling comfortable in that space. So we're going to bring awareness to that, and helping women really feel comfortable in that space. That was a challenge for me, and using, because that's one of the most powerful energies if we can and release the trauma that's been stored from our past into it, we're going to see miracle after miracle. And I just can't wait to bring this new program out.
And I can't wait to learn more about it. I'm very intrigued, and I think the audience will be too. So I would love to talk more about it. Let's set up some time to talk another episode, and I'm curious how this is going to develop. And there's definitely a great space to do that. So I love how diverse you're going to be with what you guys going to be producing, and this is just the right timing for it. So looking so much forward to talking to you again, and and guys, gals, check out Rani's podcast, which is launching again on the 22nd, and I'm so happy to have you over here on the show. You're a beautiful person, beautiful spirit, great energy, and till next time, we'll talk about more stuff. I'm just so excited. I don't know, words are not coming out of my mouth right now, but
thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor for you to spend this time with me. I'm just really appreciative to connect, and the oneness that I feel with you and that connection just reminds me of divine love. And I'm so grateful to have this experience with you, and I can't wait to do it again. So,
thank you, Rania. Well, until next time, viewers, if you enjoyed what we talked about over here, if you have comments, suggestions, or just thoughts about what we've been talking about, put those in the comments. Subscribe to the channels that we're on, and let us know if you resonate with this, and how have you been dealing with your own journey, and what have you learned? Share that. It's all about that right now, sharing and connecting with others, and I'm going to leave it at that. Peace out.